Okay, we're going to get started. So thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to our nonprofit fundraising with cryptocurrency webinar. My name is Kate Howes. I'm a sales manager here at Arkus, and today I'm joined by my Arkus team members, James Bugeaud, Arkus engagement manager and blockchain enthusiast, and Justin Edelstein, Arkus co-founder, NFT collector, and Salesforce expert. We're here with all of you for a look into the world of cryptocurrency and nonprofit giving. But before we dive in, just want to review our agenda for the day. James is going to walk us through the blockchain basics before we get into why all of this matters for organizations right now. Then we'll take a look at the importance of NFTs for nonprofits with Justin before coming back to how we're seeing organizations get started with all of this right now. We're going to also have question and answers at the end, and we'll cover additional resources that you can use to dig a little bit deeper since we only have 1 hour here today, and we'll be really covering more of the foundational pieces. We want to give you all some resources to explore more on your own as well. I do also need to call out, as those even slightly familiar with cryptocurrency world will recognize this, and those who are not will start to see it everywhere when you're doing your own research, but this webinar does not constitute financial advice. So, why is this group hosting a webinar about crypto? We're all in the Salesforce world, as many of you know, because I know that we have many attendees today who are actually our clients, but we work with nonprofits every day to help with all things Salesforce. For those of you who do not know us, Arkus is a Salesforce.org premium partner and .com gold partner, which really means that we help organizations with Salesforce day in, day out, whether that be getting set up, optimizing their current use, or training, or bringing new departments in, really whatever it might be, we're there to help. We've been in this space for over 10 years, and to date, we've worked with almost 600 clients and completed over 1,600 projects. So, given the nature of Salesforce and its ability to impact and drive efficiencies in almost every aspect of a nonprofit's work, we have the opportunity to hear a lot about our clients' hopes, dreams, aspirations for their organizations. And crypto has been coming up more and more as a topic of these conversations. We all, James, Justin, and I, come to this from slightly different levels of expertise and angles of interest, but it's something we've been digging into and having conversations with some clients about, and we wanted to bring all of that together to share with you today. So with that said, I will pass it off to James to get us started on all of the fun stuff.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is James Bugeaud, engagement manager at Arkus. Been with the company for about 5 years. I'm here because kind of a history of a varied history with blockchain and cryptocurrency, etc. I'm going to try to kind of bring us all at least to a base level understanding of some of the characteristics of blockchain and cryptocurrency. This isn't going to be like super technical. It's going to be kind of a high level. Let's talk about what cryptocurrency means and just at a basic level of understanding of why it's significant. I think that's where I'm kind of trying to get to. This slide illustrates kind of the difference between what you would consider our current monetary system and then the blockchain sort of decentralized, trustless model of a monetary system. I like to start off talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency just like historically, right? It actually came out of a reaction to the financial crash around 2008, 2009. And it was, hey, there's too much manipulation happening in currencies. We need something, like government backed, right? What's considered fiat currency. And so a white paper was written and the technology behind Bitcoin was released into the world, and it was just like, hey, here's a system that I think is better, basically, and it's a decentralization of a monetary system. So right now, right, we have banks, we have central banks, everything is going back to them, right? We have to trust that they are handling our money correctly. We have to trust that they're securing our funds. Um, Governments can print money, right? So there's not necessarily a finite supply that can have devastating impacts on monetary policy, et cetera, has impacts on everybody's well-being and also the value of the currency that you hold. So Bitcoin is basically the opposite of that. It takes several nodes, many nodes, and spreads them out. And the ledger that's normally held within a central bank is now distributed among many places, and they all have to agree on what that ledger says. And every transaction that goes through gets added in sort of basically in these blocks that make up the blockchain. So a new block gets added, that gets confirmed, and now it's part of the blockchain. So this basically builds uh, a trustless, meaning there's no one to trust, right? That we don't have to believe or put our faith in a centralized entity in order to trust that our value is secure and our transactions are going through, et cetera. It's a trustless system. So there's also a finite supply of Bitcoin. Um, we won't get into talking about mining so much, but ultimately there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and therefore no more, nobody can just print more and devalue the rest of them, which creates potentially a better store of value. At least that's the concept behind it. So that's why Bitcoin exists. And then the technology, the blockchain technology behind Bitcoin now is used beyond cryptocurrency, which we'll actually cover in the next section, talking about NFTs and things like that. So backing away from this even more and just saying like, okay, fine, like there's this blockchain and there's this decentralized network, a trustless system. That sounds great. But who cares? What does it even mean? Like, what's the impact of it? And I try to find an analogy I think that makes sense, and it's really represents the dematerialization of the monetary system. So in a similar way, like Apple Music or Spotify streaming, all these things took the music industry and dematerialized it, right? When was the last time you bought a CD or a record, for that matter? Unless you're a collector, it's probably been a few years because essentially the music industry has been dematerialized. That sort of it's been a very powerful move that's changed a lot of things and been very disruptive in the space. Well, you could think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as having a similar impact on the monetary network, where we're taking and removing brick and mortar institutions, government intervention, banks in general, and the monetary policy of governments out of the monetary system and allowing people to self-secure their own funds and also transfer funds from peer to peer, one to the other, without any middleman, without anybody to say that whether or not you can do this um, or how much you can send or any of those things. So it sort of just removes so much of the infrastructure, the like actual physical infrastructure, out of this in a way that I think it represents this dematerialization of the monetary network. That should ultimately allow for more seamless transitions of funds across borders, and obviously like some of this is idealized, right? There's a lot of criticism around um, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as well, and there's obviously it is very disruptive, and you can tell because governments are making policy now around Bitcoin because it's an incredibly significant space at this point. So another reason why you may want to pay attention to this space and in fact care about it is because of the amount of money and value that is now held in cryptocurrencies. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see basically it's a list of this is like coin market capitalization of cryptocurrencies. So you can see it's basically the supply times the price equals the total market capitalization of that currency. So this was this slide was probably, it's already out of date. I forget when I took the screenshot. It was a few days ago. The market capitalization of Bitcoin at the moment is $810 billion. There's only 18.8 million Bitcoin in supply at the moment. The rest have yet to be mined. The price is currently much more than 43,000. This must have been taken almost a week ago. I think it's, well, I won't even guess. It changes, right? Then you have other cryptocurrencies. There's over $1 trillion in the space, right, of value. So people are holding cryptocurrencies. Institutions are holding cryptocurrencies. They're transacting with it, and then beyond just the transfer of value and whatnot, there are other applications of cryptocurrency projects that represent all sorts of new technologies and ideas and things like that. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about that in the next presentation. So this, I think, is probably the most significant reason to care, right? There are people who are now participating in this, and they very may well prefer to send organizations that they care about, that they believe in, cryptocurrency rather than a fiat currency in its stead. I'll try to address, at least briefly, some of the major criticisms of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, just to kind of head them off. There will be time for questions later on, and I'm happy to go in depth on any number of topics or get a little more technical about some of this stuff if need be. But one of them is that Bitcoin is for criminals, and that it makes the movement of funds so easy that it basically promotes crime. But I'd actually argue that it would be a terrible idea to use Bitcoin as a criminal because of the nature of the blockchain. We talked earlier about the fact that this ledger is distributed and actually fixed in place and copied at many nodes, right? Like not just like a central bank. And so the movement of funds is readily viewable on the blockchain by anybody. It's actually public. You can go and explore the blockchain at will and see where funds transferred here, there, the other place. In order to sort of cover your tracks on the Bitcoin blockchain, you have to go through a fair amount of effort. In the same way that you might have to go through a fair amount of effort to launder money like US dollars, like cash, right? Which is debatably a much better choice in a criminal activity than Bitcoin. Why would you want to deal with trying to clean up your path on a digitally distributed ledger rather than just like, moving briefcases of cash around? Anyway, there's a big argument to make that is actually a terrible idea to try to commit criminal activity by using the blockchain. And that's actually been proved recently by Bitcoin being recovered in cases where it was recently used for like large ransoms and things like that, in cases that happened, I think even just earlier this year. So enough on that. Again, like doesn't really cover the breadth of the topic, and there's probably a bunch more debate that could happen there, but just as kind of a note, as that's commonly said without any context at all as a criticism of Bitcoin. The other one is to do with mining, which we didn't really cover, but it's a necessary part of the Bitcoin network that ultimately secures the network against bad actors who might want to try to manipulate the ledger. So mining is the way that you sort of release new Bitcoin into the world, but it also, the energy and the power that's used in mining actually is used to perform transactions and and solidify sort of new blocks, pardon me, onto the blockchain. So it's both used to secure the network and it's used to transact, right? To actually like power the network in a way. So I think that it does use a significant amount of energy, and as the price of Bitcoin goes up, we actually see that energy use go up because the economics of mining Bitcoin get better for people who are doing it. So they'll do more of it. But I would argue that, again, you need to put it in the context of what it's meant to essentially try to replace. We can talk about the inefficiency of Bitcoin or the power usage of Bitcoin, but when we talk about our current brick and mortar system, the amount of energy, consumed energy, and just general like physical material that exists in order to support our current banking system is astronomical in comparison to the energy use of keeping the Bitcoin network up and running. So, for example, and as an analogy, that's not a perfect analogy, I'll admit, sending an email uses energy. And there were a number of articles that came out talking about how much energy it takes to send emails, and that we should all be a little more conservative with the number of emails that we're sending. But when you compare sending an email to sending a letter, it's still 1.7% of the energy of sending a paper letter. So with that, I'm gonna sort of wrap up my talk. Hopefully you have a little bit better understanding. I know everybody comes at this from kind of a different place of understanding around Bitcoin. Hopefully this was slightly enlightening and kind of brings us up to speed, at least to a similar level, to talk about some of the next few pieces of this webinar. So thanks for listening, and again, there will be time for additional questions toward the end. And with that, I'm going to pass this back to Kate to discuss some of why you may care about this more specifically for your organization.
Thank you, James, for the foundation there. You know, I have been spending the past few months, really at this point, almost a year, talking to nonprofits who have been able to take advantage of crypto, as well as the platforms helping nonprofits do so, like founders over at Given and the Giving Block, to figure out more of what's really going on when nonprofits open themselves up to this world. You know, does it seem worth it? Has it been difficult? What kind of barriers were there that they had to overcome? Well, to start, you know, there's an opportunity cost that cannot be ignored. A pretty consistent theme in fundraising is that nonprofits are almost always looking for ways to increase engagement with their donors. Allowing donors to donate crypto opens up a new way for them to interact with your organization in a way that directly correlates with their own personal interests. There are also marketing opportunities when you open your organization up to accepting crypto. You'll hear from Justin shortly on the potential with NFTs, but beyond that, you're marketing yourself to stay competitive. You know, frankly, there's a potential to lose donor engagement as well. If they want to donate using crypto and cannot with one organization, they will look for an organization where they can. Another goal that we often hear from development teams is, you know, being able to reduce barriers and really, you know, attract new audiences of donors. Gemini, a cryptocurrency exchange, published their State of Crypto report for 2021. In this, they surveyed 3,000 crypto investors and crypto curious consumers in the US. 39% of crypto holders were between the ages of 25 to 34, and another 35% are 35 to 44. These are historically difficult age groups to reach. Crypto provides that opportunity to attract those younger donors, or at the very least, make sure that if they want to donate to an organization in crypto, that they won't have to look elsewhere to do so. While the majority of holders are in those younger audiences, those who actually hold the most crypto are in the older age groups. So another opportunity cost of not accepting crypto would be the potential to miss out on donations from high net worth individuals. At its most basic level, if donors want to give to your organization in crypto and they can't, they're going to turn where they can. And really, what do you aim to lose? Giving Block reports that they'll process over 100 million in donations this year. And a couple weeks ago, Given reported and helped facilitate a donation of over $10 million through their platform as one donation. With those high net worth individuals, an important part of any development strategy, it's not just a question of how can we make it easy for our donors to give us money, but how can we make it actually beneficial for them to give us their donation as opposed to another organization. It may sound counterintuitive, but the barriers are actually quite low here. Not only does it financially benefit your donors to be able to donate in crypto, especially for those high value investors, because they're avoiding the capital gains tax and maximizing their donations while reducing costs to themselves, but you're actually engaging with a group of donors that are going to be very low maintenance to you as a nonprofit. Of course, there will be exceptions to this rule, but given the nature of the crypto audience, they're going to know exactly what to do when they reach your donation page. It's going to be very intuitive and easy for your crypto donors. So what I would position here is that it's more on the nonprofits at this point to learn about it, because those donors already exist and they're ready to give. And finally, as with most things where opportunity cost is something that we're talking about, it's not just a question of why it matters generally. It's a question of why it matters now. Early adopters are going to get the most out of this. Similar to a transition from direct mail to email and social media, or a pivot to virtual events and online fundraising at the start of the pandemic, those who did it first tend to benefit the greatest. In the same Gemini report, 63% of the US is currently crypto curious, meaning they don't own any crypto but are actively interested in learning more and or are planning to buy it soon. And it should be noted, women account for more than half of this group. So when we talk about that new audience piece, that comes into play as well. Now, if you really want to get involved and take it to the next level, some of the most exciting developments that we've seen, and in talking to recent nonprofits who have benefited from this, come from the NFT side as well. So I'm going to pass it off to Justin to elaborate on that a bit more.
Thank you, Kate. So culture on the internet these days is changing to the point where GM friends wag me actually means something to people. And because you're all here, I consider you part of the WAGME crowd, and all of you are my friends. So in plain English, good morning. Welcome to Web3, and we're all going to make it. Since we've had the capability in the early 90s, we've been creating and uploading content to the internet for free. Look at this funny meme of Danny Rojas. Someone created this. Someone uploaded it to the internet, and now I'm using it because of Google. What allows us as consumers to consume this media for free? And generally speaking, it's our attention, or in other words, advertising. And advertising is the internet's default business model. Use a search engine, you're serving up ads. Use a social media platform, you're serving up ads, you're consuming ads. You have a free email account, ads. Buy something online, get an email ad. Who wants this, right? Who signed up for this back in the early 90s? The answer is nobody wants this. However, it's the current way of doing business on the internet. So right now, the few large corporations that run the most effective ad networks control most of the value on today's internet, not the people creating the content. And on today's internet, we don't get paid for the work that we do with our creativity. We just build audiences on platforms that we do not control. Please think of this in donation terms, not necessarily only in creatives selling art and streaming videos. What's more about these services we use to spread the word is that the content we upload to them is then trapped there. These services not only make money from our content, they also control it and in some cases even censor it. But we're here to say not anymore. Welcome to Web3 and the world of NFTs. So we move on to the next slide here. So NFTs, more than anything, are a technology breakthrough. They offer us the opportunity to break away from that sort of broken ad-driven system that I just described. And you're probably sitting there asking yourself, so what is this? What is an NFT and why do they matter to nonprofits? Simply speaking, it's a certificate of ownership registered on the blockchain for everyone to see. It's not too dissimilar to the deed that you get when you buy a house in the physical world. But instead of a house, an NFT denotes ownership of a file on the internet. So NFTs are a one-of-a-kind and unique digital asset that is stored in a crypto wallet. They're, at the end of the day, they're just a token. They're not the image you see. They're far more than just an image, and we'll get into that in a moment when I dive into the guts of what is an NFT. They're extremely hard to compare to one another. After all, they are unique and they are not fungible. They're extensible. Again, it is a technology breakthrough, and metadata drives a lot of the value. So some examples like a fair trade designation or an artist's signature could be embedded within this digital file. Some potential uses in our world for nonprofits: membership organization management, fundraising collaborations with artists and causes, and event management and auctions. Unlike the current state where information is made available through proprietary apps and platforms, NFTs are extremely portable. Instead of living on a company's private servers, they live on this decentralized infrastructure that is peer-to-peer, open, and transparent, as James described earlier on. The true power here is that it enables the owner of the token or tokens to use them to enjoy different experiences on the websites that they're a member of. So let's talk a little bit about time.com on the next slide here. So this is time.com. This is a 98-year-old brand. Look at the section on the left. It says Connect Wallet. On the bottom, you can even see, I was kind of hovering over that link, the website, you may be able to make it out there, that it would connect to. See it there slightly? It has the word crypto wallet in the URL. This is a 98-year-old brand that dropped an NFT and a new brand called Timepieces as a way to engage with a new community, as well as provide a logged in experience for token owners, opening up the content gate until the end of 2023. That is an entirely new business model for an almost 100-year-old brand. It is astonishing to see that shift in a publishing model. And, you know, just anecdotally, if a 100-year-old brand that has a lot of equity built in that brand is willing to move forward in this space and is stating publicly that this is their future, this is their next 100 years, I think that's rather interesting and not quite as scary as it's made out to be sometimes. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about what an NFT is and how it all works. So in the few minutes that I have here, I'm not going to be able to get into all of this because, you know, there's a lot to it and they're still very much in their infancy. The naysayers, or the so-called right-click save as crowd, simply state that an NFT is just a photo or a JPEG. And as we've discussed already, they are far more than that. This image illustrates the building blocks technically under the covers of an NFT. In the coming decade, once wallet technology becomes more mobile native and user-friendly, this is my opinion, NFTs will reshape the internet as we know it, with ownership and property rights embedded in immutable contracts, while enabling a level of identity and single sign-on to unique and bespoke services unlike we've ever experienced before. Time is a good example of that. So in this graphic, we have a layer of attributes. So let's talk through these and get a better understanding of an NFT holistically. There is the media file, of course. This is what most people think an NFT is, which is a totally fair assumption and way of thinking about it. But let's go deeper. Beyond the media file, we have a lot of metadata, or data about data, that tells us a lot of information about the token itself, including the media, but also including really important elements like the unique ID of the token, the creator of the token, the entire transaction history, the address of the token's contract for verification of authenticity, along with many content storage options, some of which are far more decentralized than others. NFTs are they're a paradigm shift in thinking about content on the internet. They can be used to fund specific projects or causes, denote member tiers, or access perks embedded in artwork that resonates with constituents. They can be used to raise awareness in public settings through galleries. And the entire time they live in this very public and visible place called the internet for anyone to see. Auditors will likely enjoy hearing that last part. Let's move on and send some thanks. So, hello, friend. David Bianchi is a trailblazing artist and creator. He's dropped a few NFTs, and every time he does it, he makes sure that there's an element of philanthropy baked in. In this way, David is truly changing the world. A completely new wave of philanthropy is cresting right now, and David's at the forefront of this movement. His artwork is extremely powerful. It speaks to social injustice in a way that is so raw and impactful. And then what he does is he flips the whole system on his head. He talks about it and then he does it. He breaks all the bars and enjoys the ability to create on his own, sell his work on his own, and then donate these proceeds to organizations that align to his why. And that is like power to the people, right? That's David personifies this, and I thank him all the time for his work. I think he's in the audience right now, and if he is, thank you again, David. Let's move on to the Bored Ape Yacht Club, or BAYC, which is currently the premier PFP project in the space. So what you see here lives as an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain and is a member of an elite society in the metaverse. This is not a joke. It's a real yacht club with 10,000 unique ape membership cards currently held by about 5,500 individual wallets. This is a really popular trend. People use these images, or PFPs, profile photos, as their internet persona, and they love doing it. So much so that they spend real money, a lot of it sometimes, collecting these memberships or tokens, and the proceeds of each transaction goes back to the creators. Remember, as James discussed earlier, this is a modern way of thinking about how people transact with each other for goods or services. So in this case, every single time a person trades an ape for cryptocurrency, the underlying contract that facilitates that transaction sends a predefined and transparent percentage back to the creators of the project. And this is a game changer for digital artists. And they realize this, so much so that they give back. The apes rallied around the Orangutan Outreach Project because the Orangutan Outreach Project also embraced the Bored Ape Yacht Club. If you check their Twitter, Orangutan Outreach or @RedApes, there's a picture of an ape, the NFT, which has a name, Julius. That engagement with the community has raised them hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps millions, in less than 5 months for their program. That's an amazing, that is just an amazing thing that's happened. And it is all facilitated by blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. So really briefly, on the next slide, just to give a quick thanks and shout out to the Giving Block. They posted this just 2 days ago, good timing. And they posted the 11 most charitable NFT projects as of earlier this week. And you could see the Bored Apes there. I think they're third, $850,000 so far just from them to Orangutan Outreach. And I also want to specifically call out Blazed Cats. All the proceeds, every single thing that they've made goes to an organization called Mental Health America. So every dime of royalties goes to charity. And I think that that's really special. So I'm gonna leave it there and kick this back to Kate for her to continue on in this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin. And we wanted to just give you a really quick glance at what it actually looks like to accept crypto through one of these platforms. And this one specifically is powered through Given, but it'll be very brief. You can go to any of these organizations' websites really and click around and click donate and see what it looks like. But like I mentioned earlier, the donors are ready to give crypto. We're just trying to familiarize nonprofits now with what that looks like. So I'll click play. And this just highlights how it's not scary. When you go to a donate page, it's really quite similar to giving in USD. So from the donor perspective, it's quite simple. And there's some more information accessible to donors should they want it, but they can even choose which kind of cryptocurrency to give. It will show them exactly how much it is in USD, and they can allocate, to a specific fund, and it's really quite simple. It's not scary, like I said. And then I saw there was a great question already that relates to this, in terms of resources needed on your end to be able to accept crypto or come up with a strategy around, okay, are we holding it? Are we converting it? These platforms in Given and Giving Block do give you the option to auto convert donations to USD. So you don't even really have to think about it once it's set up in terms of what are we going to do with this crypto. It will auto convert and come to you all as nonprofits as USD. So ultimately it will not require much time at all on your end once it's set up. And Given and Giving Block both are great resources to help you get that set up initially. And so we did include links to both of their websites. Each of their websites has great resources and information about nonprofits who use their platform. So it's also a good place to go just after this webinar if you're trying to learn a little bit more. They both have extensive resource pages to help you learn a little bit more. On the NFT side, one of the barriers is that you actually do need someone who can help create the art. If you don't have that internally, Doing Good is a newer platform that is helping connect artists to social causes that they care about, and it would be worth reaching out to them as well. If you aren't quite sure, who you want to talk to, how to evaluate in Given versus Giving Block as a fit for you guys, or trying to think about how you would approach creating an NFT project or getting involved or connected to NFT projects also, we can help provide more direction based on your goals. So we do want you to feel free to reach out to us with any questions after this webinar as well. And it should be noted, both Giving Block and Given have nonprofits that you've heard of using their platforms. And Given has Salvation Army, Compassion International, March of Dimes. Like Justin mentioned, the Giving Block works with orangutan outreach, but also a couple Big Brother, Big Sisters, YMCA chapters, Wake Forest universities. So this really is something that those nonprofits are taking advantage of, and it's easy for any nonprofit to do the same. And we are ready to open it up for some questions and answers. I know we've been answering some directly in the webinar, and I'm sure others have come up. Let me just pull up the questions and see what has not been answered so far. Justin, there's a great NFT question.
There is actually. I think it's from Todd.
Yes.
Is that the one that you're looking at? Yeah. So Todd asks, what do I do, quote, do with an NFT if I own one? If it's an image, can I print it and hang it, or does it live virtually? So the answer is kind of varies based on the NFT that you own, Todd. So I'll give you some examples, and maybe some of those examples will help paint the picture, no pun intended. So sometimes you're buying a token just because you like it, and it's going to live virtually and just exist in your wallet because you like it, just like a piece of art that you would put in a vault and never show anybody. Pretty much the same thing. Alternatively, you might buy a bunch of tokens that you want to show off. There are many applications for creating galleries of your NFTs. So you can create virtual galleries and show them off. If you're an organization, you can even show off your institutional gallery. Beyond that, as we saw as an example with Orangutan Outreach, they bought into a community. They bought a token that was part of a thriving community and then co-opted it and sort of embedded themselves into the community by using the token as their Twitter avatar and as their other social engagement avatars. So most NFT projects will actually come with a license and tell you what you can and cannot do with that particular token. And most oftentimes you can sort of do whatever you want because you own it. However, you can't do much with the underlying brand. So Orangutan Outreach, for example, can do anything they want with Julius, and they named Julius because they wanted to. However, they cannot use the brand Bored Ape Yacht Club in any of their marketing efforts. So those are a handful of use cases on the art side. There's other use cases on the utility side where, again, NFTs are more than just art. Remember, they have metadata and things in them that describe a bit about, well, what is this token? What level is this token at? Does this token provide access to something that otherwise you would not have access to, like a conference or an event? I own an NFT, for example, that is quite literally a ticket to an event. Nobody without the NFT is going to be allowed into the event because the NFT is actually the ticket, and it's a ticket for the next 3 years. So I mentioned a little bit of that in my talk about how you can use them because they can be used as tickets for events, and then you can sort of flip into auctions where people can buy things that you're live auctioning right there on the spot. A lot of these functional elements like running an auction, running an event, running a sale is built in right there into the technology stack as it already exists. So I hope that was a useful answer to that question.
All right, I'm going to take a couple of questions. This is James again. We have a couple that I think will help paint a clearer picture around some of the organizations that have formed around blockchain, specifically Bitcoin in some cases, etc. One question was, is Coinbase a blockchain? And the answer is no. Coinbase is an exchange. So an exchange being where you can, trade one type of currency for another. In this case, it acts as a gateway, which is what I would say any organization or application that supports the exchange of a fiat currency to a cryptocurrency. So like buying Bitcoin with US dollars would be a gateway. So that's basically something you can connect to a bank account, etc., and buy Bitcoin with US dollars. So that becomes a gateway. But then once you have bought a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano or something like that, and it lives in the exchange, they are securing your funds in a wallet that they control. So it's possible to have like a local wallet or a wallet on a device that you own and secure your own what they call keys. And that would be like a wallet that without, since you own the keys, you own the wallet. And that's kind of a common thing that you'll hear in the crypto world, right? Whereas if it's on the exchange, it's theoretically only as safe as the exchange is keeping your keys. So that's where it's possible to self-secure your own funds with cryptocurrency, right? I only use exchange, like I use Coinbase, for example, personally. That's not a recommendation, to as a gateway, right? To turn US dollars into cryptocurrency. But then my cryptocurrencies that I hold, I secure personally, because I don't want them on an exchange. So the exchange is really just a place to transact, things like that. There's, I think, like debatably that starts to centralize some aspects around cryptocurrency, which is in fact the case, I think, but it doesn't inherently change the technology. It's not its own blockchain. It's a company that facilitates transactions on the blockchain, on many blockchains, in fact, because they support many cryptocurrencies. That's a long answer to a short question, but I hope that sort of paints that picture clearly. I'll also take another one that Todd asked about, how to justify the environmental impacts of crypto mining for your organization. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this, and we could talk about it for a long time, but I will say that there have been some really interesting renewable energy projects that wouldn't have happened, or that are currently underway that wouldn't have happened without Bitcoin mining. And the reason that's true is because when you go to implement a renewable energy project, like a big wind farm or a solar farm or something like that, you have to justify the cost, right? You have to be able to sell the energy or have a way to store the energy effectively. Storing energy is very expensive. So if you throw Bitcoin mining into the mix of that equation, then any energy that you're unable to sell or store at a reasonable cost, you can then use to mine Bitcoin. And that actually has flipped the economics of implementing renewable energy projects in a way that actually has seen a growth in them. So ultimately, that should allow for a greater expansion of renewable energy more quickly than previously possible. So I hope that is a kind of an interesting point that is in fact true and happening today. Those renewable energy projects will supply clean energy, not just for mining, right? It's the leftover energy that would justify the expense of putting up the project. So, who wants to take the next question? I didn't have another one queued up. Sorry, I will look through.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Coming in fast. Why will it take 20 years to mine to the remaining 3 million Bitcoin? It could actually take much longer than that, to the tune of like 100 years to mine the remaining Bitcoin. And the reason is that the reason that mining even exists, one, is to provide power to the network and security to the network for decentralization, right? Like all those nodes that are running are putting power into the network, but they also represent essentially the amount of power that a single entity would have to overcome in order to take over the network, which has basically now become almost impossible. Also debatable. Then that mining effort becomes more difficult I think it's either 2 years or 4 years. It's different depending on the blockchain. So every 2 years, I think the difficulty goes up, and therefore mining rewards are also halved. Don't hold me to these specific numbers. They vary depending on the currency. But I think for Bitcoin, there's a halving in rewards for mining, and also difficulty goes up over time. So as it basically is meant to align with right, your rewards diminish, but the value of a single Bitcoin has gone up more than the amount of diminishing returns on mining, right? Like the actual quantity of Bitcoin is so much less in terms of rewards for mining, but the value of the token itself has gone up more proportionally. So it's actually still, it's like more economically viable to mine, or it's similarly economically viable to mine as it ever was, even though you earn a lot less tokens. So does that hopefully answer that question? All right, what's
And
next?
there's another question here. Once an organization receives cryptocurrency, can they only use it for other crypto transactions? So no, Giving Block and Engiven, both two platforms that allow nonprofits to accept crypto as donations, have the option so that once the donation comes in, it auto converts to USD. So what that means is really your donor is donating cryptocurrency to the organization, but the organization is essentially receiving it as US dollars. So it would be US dollars then to you. Another question was, who on a team would you need in order to accept crypto? You know, do we need any in-house experts, or who should we have involved? Like we kind of discussed, I would say marketing teams are important to have involved because of the potential there, but also, you know, buy-in from anyone who's going to be able to promote your NFT projects and get the word out there. So marketing and anyone who might have kind of a presence in social media, and of course the development teams. There are a few more questions, but I know we only have 2 minutes left. We were cognizant that this webinar could potentially leave you with more questions than answers, but hopefully it at least built a foundation in order to understand where to go to answer some of those questions, or they're interesting questions that get you excited about maybe potentially looking into this more. We did include some resources so that after this webinar, you can go out and look for some of those answers yourselves, but we're also happy to set up one-on-one time and talk with you guys a bit more about all of this. With that, I think we wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we also have the contact form on our website. If you need an answer now or you want to talk now, go to our website and just fill out the contact us form, and we'll get back to you that way too. Thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day.